Hi everybody, Isaac Kenley here, blockchain developer. Today I'm going to be talking about the first steps every ICO should take before starting their software development process. Often people want to hire a Solidity or smart contract developer or app developer or even a website developer before they have a proper blockchain software infrastructure architecture and design in place. This needs to be in place before you start a token sale, before you seek investors, and it's very much needed in the blockchain space. I'm proposing that a first step should be to hire a software architect or designer who specializes in blockchain technology. And this is so that you can scale and have a plan and a design in place for infrastructure needed down the road. Some of the questions that you should ask are: how will you manage data? Will you have on-site servers or use a cloud? If you have existing databases with customers and for information, how will you operate a development area for testing? Some of these questions I'm going to touch on today, and these factors are what investors should be looking at as an ICO's approach to scalability issues. If you just launch an ICO, an app, and a website, and haven't addressed these issues, especially when it comes to the handling of data, your apps and websites will be prone to bugs, overwhelmed, and at worst, constantly crashing. And you'll get bad reviews because you haven't addressed the back-end development needs of your project before scaling happens. Software architecture and design is meant to create a foundation, a framework for your project. Just as if you were engineering a bridge, you would have to create a blueprint for the designers and engineers to follow. So a lot of people come to me and they want me to write a smart contract to create an ICO for them. This is created in Solidity. You can create smart contracts in other languages, but the most common one right now is Solidity for token creation. You may already have a website. And an app. And you're thinking you're ready to create a smart contract now and create a token, an ICO, to raise funds. But you don't have a structure in place to handle data. If you start getting 10,000, 20,000 clicks on your website every day, 20,000 downloads of your app, and then click-throughs, read-throughs, customer downloads, customer uploads, customer sales. Where is all this going? So, some things that you can put into place are data, such as Hadoop, and servers. For example, Zookeeper, along with Kafka. I'm not saying you have to have these, but you need something. You can't just start raising funds and project scalability into the tens of thousands if you don't have a plan to handle all that data in place. And it needs to be in place before you start even considering a smart contract. You can do all of this on your own home servers, or you can do it in the cloud, AWS or something analogous. You also need to have in place your development process, back end and front end. I see too often ICOs coming to me who just want a front end developer, a full stack front end developer, of course, to create all these smart contracts, to launch their ICO and do all of this, and can you please hurry it up? But the problem is, if you don't have a back-end development plan, a place where you can test, unit tests, such as Docker, and GitHub, where developers can collaborate and work together to work on your software, or to even work on your smart contract. And of course, your data. These are 3 prerequisites you need to have to be addressing before you go to investors. With Docker, if in case you have existing data, maybe you already have a data in place, you can test your connection and events that will be happening with your smart contract and your apps and websites in Docker. It's a containment area. It's where you can compose code, test it, all in a contained environment where it doesn't affect your current systems. Something like Docker you need to have in your development plan and in your software architecture. GitHub, you need somebody who has a solid understanding of how to work in GitHub, including commits, branching, developer collaboration, and working in different languages, so that you can bring on as many developers as you may need to interact with your smart contract, to tie everything together, to program it, to create your apps and websites. These are necessary components. There are other repositories you can go to. You don't have to go to GitHub. A lot of these depend on your specific needs. If you're doing a messaging app, you probably will be working a lot in React. If you're doing financial security, you will be working a lot with distributed ledger technologies. I'm going to do a video on distributed ledger software architecture and design in relation to blockchain technology, so make sure you look out for that. Websites and apps are often written in JavaScript and HTTP. So in your design, you need to know which coding languages you're going to need to hire for. A lot of the back end is written in Java and in Python. Docker Compose is where you're going to be interacting with a lot of the events-driven architecture that is happening when all of these things come together and your smart contract is launched and you create events on the blockchain. You're going to need to work in Docker Compose, and that's in Python. Some apps Especially if you're working with distributed ledger technology, you're going to be working in Golang as well. And then just with Docker and your data and coordinating it with all the events in your smart contracts, there's over 100 bash scripts that have to be run just to be able to get all of this programming right. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more, depending on your needs, depending on what your scale is. But you want to have a plan in place. I'm not saying you have to have all of these going when you go to write your smart contract. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you need 8 servers set up and, even Docker set up. I think you will need GitHub, but even that's not essential from the beginning. But you need a plan. You need something that addresses investor questions when it comes to scalability. If you just come to an investor and say, hey, we have this app, we think we're going to get to 20,000, I guarantee you they're going to ask you some of these questions about scalability, because nobody wants to invest in an ICO that's going to crash because it didn't have a architecture or design in place. So bash scripts are the programming languages that create the events, that connect with the servers, that listen to the servers, and so forth. So you'll need a lot of bash scripts. Any programmer, seasoned programmer, knows that bash scripts are kind of what ties everything together. They're very simple to write, but they're necessary. Well, I've gone through just a little bit of the basic architecture and design. A lot of this is dependent on where you're at as a company. If you're a startup and you just have a simple website with very little user interaction so far, this would be a basic start to a project architecture. If you're an existing company and you have 20 to 30 servers already containing many gigabytes or even terabytes of customer data, you will need a blockchain architecture and designer to come in and look at what your project goals are, what your microservices are, what modules you might need to implement your vision. That's something I'm available to do. You can reach out to me via email. My email address is in my bio on YouTube. I'm available to travel anywhere to give presentations on this. And I'm also available as a consultant via Skype or Google Hangouts or Zoom or other online meeting places. So reach out to me. I'm readily available. And I'll be doing more videos to follow up on this topic because software architecture and design in relation to blockchain is something that's very needed today in the current market to enhance ICO's ability to raise funds in the marketplace. I'm all for ICOs. I think it's a great way to raise money, but ICOs need to have a scalability, design, and implementation in place so that they can scale when needed. Thank you so much and have a great day.